What's good, guys? It's your boy Beats Bash coming at you with another banger of a video, and today I wanted to bring you a deck profile of the deck that I played last night at locals. I went 4-0 for the first time. I played in 3 tournaments so far since joining the game. Can I get a W in the chat for my first dub, boys? I think that this leader is very strong, and I think it's very rewarding, and I think the way that I have cultivated the deck is very different than the way a lot of people play it. And so I felt like sharing that with you guys and just kind of sharing some of the insights that I found, because I think the deck is very good against red as well as law. And I personally believe that if you are a high skill player, law is probably the best deck in the game. And now the disadvantages of the deck are that the purple matchup is kind of like slightly favored towards Kaido, and I would say that the green matchup is probably the most difficult matchup. But if you're metagaming that your locals is going to be a lot of aggro, I think this is a very strong choice. And I would also like to point out this is probably one of the most consistent leaders in the game, just because your leader doesn't really require any cards for you to have access to engine, and I really like that about the deck. I really like the fact that you can mitigate the level of RNG in the deck, and it has a high level of skill expression, whereas someone like Kaido, if you go in the mirror match, you could just be the person who doesn't curve out as well, and at a certain point it becomes very polarizing. So that's kind of why I've chosen the deck. I'm going to go into my matchups at the end, and if you stick around long enough, I'm going to open up the winners pack that I got, just to prove to you guys, I got the dub. Hopefully we pull something good out of there, and I'm going to go ahead and just get right into it, boys. Let's get into the goo. Okay, so starting off, I organized things a little bit differently. So I decided to play the maximum amount of starters in the deck, which is what I think is very important. Starter cards are cards that I want to open in my initial hand, and that is 4 Perona, as well as 4 copies of Doflamingo. So the thing about these cards, they allow you to stack your deck, and if you open one of these, you automatically have engine with your leader. And essentially the way that I feel you should play the deck is that you should be using your leader turn every time that you have a guaranteed hit, just because it's free value every turn. And when you think about it, if you're attacking their leader for 7k by using this ability, then what's happening is you're also generating a card, whereas they are taking a damage and generating a card as well. So you're not actually giving them a +1 in card advantage. And in some situations, like if you hit a Gecko Moria, you're actually getting a +1 on that trade, as well as a 7k attacker is a very strong number to have in this game, requiring them to use at least 2 cards if they're using counter from hand. So I think you can generate a lot of advantage off of this ability, and I think that's the strongest part of the deck. I think that every turn you have the option to use the ability, you should do so, as long as the target you have is appropriate. And the next thing I want to point out is about these cards, you typically want to maintain the stack as long as possible. And what I mean by that is, if you use Perona on turn 1 and you see a Doffy in the top 5, I'm not going to put this as the card I'm going to trigger on turn 2. I'm putting this as the card I'm going to trigger on turn 3. And the reason being is that I can get my first trigger on something like a Boa, or maybe a Teach or a Gecko Moria, and then on the following turn, I can then reestablish this, which allows me to do the stack again, and I can potentially hit a trigger off of my leader ability on the following turns after that. So I think the longer that you maintain the stack, the better. So that's why I always try to order this as my second trigger in the top 5 if you're given 2 cards you can summon off of the leader ability. So these cards are very strong. It's about a 66 or 68% chance, something around there, to open one of these in your starting hand. And as well, I play 4 Trafalgar Law. I saw a profile where a guy only played 3 of these. Else in the chat. You need 4 of this. This card's broken. It comes up so much that you have precisely 1 mana left, and you need to make an action that's going to impact the game, which Trafalgar Law is going to do just that. In fact, it's very important because he protects things like your Boa, which generates you a lot of advantage, and you have to understand that this ability puts whatever you put into play tapped, aka rested. So it is very it's high threat, especially when you get a good hit. So the Trafalgar Law is very important because, you may have 4 Dawn and you stack with Perona turn 1, then you're going to use your leader ability, get your guaranteed hit. It comes in rested, and the Law, it guarantees that protection, which I find very important in the deck. So you have to play 4 of this, as well as this is a card you can hit off the top if you need to. It can also be added off of Gecko Moria, which is very relevant. Then I play 4 Mihawk. I mean, it's just standard. I'm not going to talk about it too much. Typically, you want to be very hasty about discarding this. You don't have to be conservative about keeping this in hand, even if it's a 1k attack. If it protects your rested guy, it's usually worth it, because if you are managing the stack appropriately, you should have access to Gecko Moria sometime during the game. And this is the best thing to add off of Gecko Moria, because especially if you triggered off your leader, you are generating a 4-cost 5k for 3 mana while using no cards. Then you're adding another card back for a +1, which happens to be a 2k counter. And if you have a 2k counter, you're probably protecting the rested character you hit off this ability on the following turn. So this card is crazy. Make sure to, add this back off Gecko Moria. And, if you want to hit this off of your trigger, it's not bad. Anything that's 5k is a good thing to hit with your leader. You just need to make sure that you are managing your protection, because there are better things to protect, such as Boa Hancock. And while we're on that, in the 2k package, I decided to max out on 4 Alvida. I've seen a lot of people play only 3 Alvida, which I don't know why you would do that. Honestly, I would be interested in switching this out for Mr. Bond. Some people say that you can put this on the board against certain matchups that you want to balance something and maintain tempo, but really you should just be, advancing tempo so much in the deck that should not be a problem. You need to keep this in your hand, and 9 out of 10 times, if you actually play this, you're losing, because the 2k is so relevant for protecting whatever you summon off of your leader ability. So 4 of those. Now, that's it for the 2k package. If you would like to, you could definitely replace it for Mr. Bond. Mr. Bond is a card that you might actually want to play, whereas Alvida is a 2k that you would never really want to play, because Mr. Bond is a 3-cost 4k attacker, which can be given 1 Dawn to make an additional pressure. So into the cards you want to summon, for Kuma, a lot of people think like you could just play this card without playing Pacifista, but I honestly have went against really good people so far, and no one plays around this. Like, if you're establishing early pressure, I like to not summon this early. I like to summon this off my leader late, just so I go in for some early damage. And once you've done a couple damage, they're gonna have to kill it regardless, because it's getting another attack in and the pressure is too much. You're gonna end the game too fast. So 4 of those, and then 4 Boa. This is the best card in the deck, to be honest. It generates a +1 every turn. I think this card is gonna be meta for a long time. If you have to discard 2 to 3 cards to protect it and you summon it off your Doffy, it's worth it. Now let me explain to you why. So let's say you discard 3 cards. Okay, well, I'm getting back to my turn. I'm going to attack. I'm going to draw a card. So now I only discarded 2 cards. If I have access to a Gecko Moria and I manage my stack properly, I'm adding back, whatever I discarded, potentially a Mihawk there. So then that's even a, +1. And you got to think, if they attack this with a character, which they probably are, because, you have enough counters in hand, if you're managing your resources appropriately, then their character is tapped. So on the following turn, your +1 draw from your Boa, you're also using this to kill one of their characters that attempted to kill this. So then you just end up even trading, and you didn't even discard anything. So that's something very important. Protect the castle when you can. Now, for Gecko Moria, I'm not going to talk about this too much. I mean, it's just a staple in the blue deck. Best things to add back: Mihawk, add back Trafalgar Law if you're at 5. Because a lot of times you have only 1 mana available additionally, and you just want to establish a blocker, because on the following turn you're going to have like 3 or 4 or 5k bodies, including your leader, and that's usually enough pressure to go for lethal. So this is going to be a staple in blue for a long time. Same thing with Boa. I don't see these cards being power creeped for some time now. And that's all for the package that you want to summon. Now I'm going to go into the big guy package. Now this is going to be really controversial. 1 Don Quixote. So I see everyone just play 2 of this because they're just brain dead and they net deck. I only play 1 of this because I found that, number 1, you don't want cards in hand that have no counter ability. Number 2, this card does not, it doesn't get rid of anything, and it doesn't really hit things. Like, in the matchups where it's good against, you should already win. It's really only good if you already have stacked a Mihawk and you bounce something on the following turn, then you Mihawk and you just, you just tempo them out with big bodies. So I typically I like the one of, because you manage your resources appropriately, then you're going to stack this when you need it for your Mihawk, and it's just a huge tempo swing, which can lead to game. But other than that, you do not need more than one, because it has no counter and you're going to die. Then 2 Mihawk, you definitely do not need more than 2. You can only play this on 10, and at that point, it's just like, how often do you want to play a card that doesn't allow you to use your leader ability in the same turn? That's something very important to think about, because, you want to just be using this every turn. It's just free value. So this card is really good for Law. Like, honestly, people love this card and die by this card, but it has no counter. You can't use your leader ability. It's really only in there because Law is probably one of the best cards in the game, if not the most pushed card. Like, it's just so broken, and putting it on the bottom of the deck just gives you so much advantage that you should just win based off that. So 2 is fine. And then the last big guy, I play 3 Croc. So Croc, a lot of people hate this guy, and I think a lot of people misunderstand the use of this guy. It's not even really the fact that you can reduce event cards, and it's also not even the fact that you can banish. Like, the banish comes up, and this card is definitely very strong versus Kaido. So if you have a lot of Kaido, you could play 4. But the reason I play 3 of this card is because it is one of the only big guys in the game, not even just in blue, that has a counter, which is very important, because most of the time you're playing this, or any big body in general, is because you're establishing a 7k or higher attacker. And this card has the versatility that against aggro, or if you're just taking a lot of damage early, you can discard it for the counter. So I really think this card is necessary in the deck. I was playing 4, but I think 3 is just fine, because I don't think events are that strong. And people, overvalue that effect of the events. You really don't even want to do that. It sounds good, but it's really only good in Blurple Croc, which we're not playing Blurple Croc for a reason. So 3 of those, but I want more of him than the other big guys, just because he has the counter ability, which is so strong. Now, let's go into the red hate / aggro hate package. I play 3 Teach. Honestly, you could play 4 Teach. I thought about it. I think it's really strong, but in some matchups, like Law, bouncing the hand is not that good. What's really nice about it is that you bounce blockers and allows you to kill searchers. And if you turn 1 Perona stack this, and then turn 2 use your leader ability while you're on the play to summon Teach, it's just a blowout, man. Like, this card is broken. So you're removing their guy. You had to have a Perona on turn 1 to do that. So now you have 2 guys. One of them is a 4k attacker. You're hitting for 7, and they now have no cards on field. They're so behind. Like, even just summoning something off of this, that's just a +1 in mana advantage. So, you're bouncing something that's crazy. And the reason I'm playing 3 is because I play 2 Jinbei. Honestly, a lot of people don't play Jinbei. Jinbei is the most broken card in the deck. I don't know how you don't play it, because searchers are the most OP thing in this game right now. And this card just allows you to bait people's searchers. It allows you to kill people's Zoro. And the trigger ability is broken. Like, if you hit this off a trigger, you win. I hit it off the trigger ability, 2 times last night, and I automatically won. Like, my deck is already angled to go against red, but I think this is necessary because the green deck is so hard to go against, because they can just protect their searchers so well, and this just allows you to answer searchers. So essentially, this card, you want to stack this on top of your deck to draw on the same turn that you would be triggering, because when you get to turn 7 and you already have a stack appropriately, you're playing this for 4, you're using this ability, maybe you get a Teach. It's just a huge tempo swing, and it's one of the only things that can allow you to stay in the green matchup, which is probably one of the worst matchups with the deck. So now I play 3 Pacifista. Honestly, I play 2. You could play 2, or you could play 4. I mean, I think 3 is good, but I would like to try 2 again. I think this card is good, but if you manage your stack appropriately, you really should, just have access to it every time. In this deck, there's so many ways to manipulate the deck that 2-ofs in the deck are so strong, because it just adds so much toolbox to the deck. But 3 worked out perfectly. Definitely play this over the blocker pacifista. You have so many blockers, you don't need it. And last card in the deck, the event package, I play 4 Love Mellow. Honestly, best blue card in the game. You're going to see this in every blue deck until we get some really power creep stuff. So, you know, set 2-3, this card is insane. You know, it gives you 4K and draws you a card. If you're managing your resources appropriately, it should draw you a card every time. It has insane synergy with Croc. And a lot of people are going to be asking, you don't play Desert Spada. Why do you not play Desert Spada? Desert Spada is really ass. A lot of people are baited by the fact they have Croc in the deck and they're like, ooh, free event, free event. Okay, well, I could just play a 2K that protects my Boa because I have no mana up because I want to be using my leader ability every turn. Like, having your leader ability up and summoning a Boa, you need to protect it. So that's why I decided to cut the Desert Spadas, play the 4th Alvita. And, you know, I was playing 1 before. Like, honestly, you really don't need to use the ability of Croc. It is not that good. It's more about the banish and the fact that it's versatile as a 7 unit or a counter. But there was a situation last night where I had 2 Level Up Beam, and if you're manipulating the deck in the correct way, in certain matchups, like versus Kaido, I had 2 of these, and it just allowed me to put 1 Dawn under my Croc to play both. I drew 2 cards. He couldn't attack me with, he attacked me with a 10 cost Kaido. And multiple people hit me for like 13K. This card allowed me to go to like 14, 15 without like losing any resources. And it just lost them the game right there. So definitely crazy. So that's it for the deck. If you enjoyed this, make sure to let me know what you want to see next, because I am brewing the goo for you guys, bringing that educational competitive content, and I really want to improve. So, you know, make sure, you know, send me love, send me hate. I don't care. I stay with the goo. I do this for my guys. And now it's time to open the event pack, or the promo pack, my bad. Go ahead and just pause the video right now. Pause the video. Let me know what you think is in the promo pack. Put your guesses down in the comments. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this open, and put your guesses in. Let's go. 8 cost Kaido. That's actually the only card that I wanted. I just wanted to open it for the video. I love this card. If you want to see a deck list utilizing this card next, let me know, because I am loving this deck and I think this card is crazy. So make sure and let me know in the comments that you want to see this deck, because this is insane. It's the sauce and a lot of people aren't going to see it coming. You can definitely get some dubs. I'm going to go over my matchups very briefly. Round 1, I went against Zoro on my friend. The deck is insane versus red. Decisively won. I was at like 4 life. Game 2, I won against Kaido. I was able to utilize Croc and then stack the Level Up Mellows, which allowed me to gain too much advantage. He couldn't kill me. And you know, when you go against Kaido, I think a lot of people misunderstand that the deck isn't that bad against Kaido. You need to rush them down, and you need to set up your board to where you don't play into 10 cost Kaido, and you should very, very fairly win. Slightly favored for them. Round 3, I went against another red player. I'm not gonna lie, I sacked him. I hit a Jinbei trigger. Jinbei is just so broken versus red. Anytime you trigger Jinbei, you should win the game. In round 4, I went against my boy Kyle on his green kid deck. Definitely the worst matchup for the deck. I barely beat him because I appropriately stacked my Mihawks, like thinking 3 or 4 turns in ahead, which allowed me to gain advantage bouncing back his law. He didn't have an appropriate turn to to put up an 8 cost kid, and I was able to kill all 4 of his Bonnies. And that's the most important thing about that matchup. You need to understand, if you have an opportunity to threaten to kill their searchers, you should always do it. That's why Perona is probably one of the best cards in the deck, and one of the reasons why I love like this deck is because I think searchers are like the best thing in the meta right now, and Perona like can always attack their Bonnie, it can attack their Momo, you know, and that's just so important right now. So I think that you definitely want to prioritize doing that, and then you can set up lethal when they're at like 1 or 2. Just mainly only use your leader early game to hit their life. But that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to smash the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. As always, if it's not the goo, it's got to go. Peace.